What if I told you you don't need to be an executive or someone with 10, 15, or even 30 years of experience to be influential at work? Hi, my name is Jessica Chen, and I am an instructor at Columbia University, and I have taught over 2 million people how to improve their communication skills at work. I have written a book called Smart, Not Loud: How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons. And throughout my career, I have always wondered, why do certain people seem to have more influence than others? Here's what I discovered. Your title or years of experience have nothing to do with whether someone listens to you at work or not. Which is why in this video, I'm going to share with you what the most influential people do to unlock opportunities, get heard, and how you can do this in your life as well. Because right now, when AI is helping us get things done, improve our efficiency, increase our productivity, it actually becomes more important to learn how to communicate and build influence, not less. In fact, I think about this as building an evergreen skill. Building influence, especially if you feel like you don't have authority, is really what can differentiate you from others and make people go, wow, you're amazing. And we have to listen to what you have to say. This is not something that's too good to be true. It's something that can be done, and I'm going to teach you the communication strategies to get you there. Because let me tell you what I don't want to happen to you. I don't want you to go into a room where you say what's on your mind, but no one listens to you. And then 3 months later, someone else comes in with the exact same idea, and suddenly it's a priority. You're now thinking, wait a second, I had that idea first. Why didn't anyone listen to me? I don't want that to happen to you. And in order for you to avoid a situation like that, it all starts with building influence. So here's a first point. Make your expertise visible. Now, I don't mean this in a self-promotional way. I mean in a strategic, consistent, generous way. Because right now, super qualified and smart people assume that the work they do should speak for itself. And I get it, because I used to think this as well. But in my book, Smart, Not Loud: How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons, I talk about how we have to completely change how we think about our work. More importantly, if you grew up in a culture where you were taught to be more humble, to put your head down and work hard, not make waves, you have to carve out your own opportunities. And it's not that people don't care about you, it's that they're busy too. Your team, your boss, your clients, they're not always thinking about you and your work, which is why building visibility around your expertise is so important. In fact, a few months ago, I remember having a conversation with one of my friends. Her name is Helena. And she was telling me how she recently interviewed for a leadership role at her company, which had just opened up. And it was actually something her boss suggested that she go for. Helena told me that as she was interviewing for this job, she assumed the hiring manager, who also knew her, knew about her work, knew about her work ethic, and knew about her accomplishments. But guess what happened? In the end, she did not get that role. It was actually given to somebody else. And Helena, she was crushed. So Helena found out later that the hiring manager did appreciate her interviewing, did like her, but she didn't get the job because she didn't make it clear during the interview why she wanted the role and what expertise she could bring to the new job. I share with you this story because expertise doesn't speak for itself. Expertise needs to be visible. It's actually what psychologist Adam Grant at Wharton found about how people who are influential make it a consistent practice to share their knowledge and insight without necessarily expecting anything in return. So influence, it turns out, is built through generosity and not hiding it within yourself. Here's a second point. Build relationships with people before you need them. Basically, invest in relationships before you ever ask someone for something. Now, this is one part of building influence that people just don't think about, because right now, so many people reach out to others when they only need something, whether it's a favor, an introduction, or just help. But without a relationship, the person who's being asked doesn't feel good about it. They don't like it. Think about it this way. You're making a withdrawal before you've made any deposits in. So to avoid that, you have to be thinking 3 steps ahead and intentionally building a relationship, knowing that maybe in the future, you might need something in return. So here's some things you can do right now. For example, reach out to someone you might not have talked to and just say you're checking in, seeing how they're doing. Or even easier, why don't you forward an article to an old colleague and just say that this article made you think about them? And it's not that you are expecting anything in return or a response even, but you are just letting them know you're thinking about them. And what you are doing here is you are staying top of mind. Another way to build a relationship is to just genuinely be helpful to other people. Studies from IBM and MIT found that employees with the widest informal network inside their organization were actually consistently rated as more influential and more effective than those with deeper and narrower relationships. So what this means for you is it's better to have a wider network with periodic check-ins because influence travels through trust. And when people trust you, they will definitely back you up when you need them the most. Now, this actually reminds me of a story that I wrote in my book, Smart Not Loud, where this guy, his name is Michael, he's in the book. He was hired as a compliance officer for a large organization he was working for. Michael said a few years in, he started to think about what he wanted to do next in his career. For him, he didn't want to stay in compliance. He actually wanted to get into the business side of the organization. So he began to think, how does someone like me who sits in compliance actually learn about business? Well, it starts with sales. So what Michael ended up doing was he ended up building relationships with those in the sales department. It wasn't anything drastic. It was simply a, hey, I just want to get to know you and see if there's anything I can do to help you as well. Well, it turns out in this outreach that he was doing, there was something that Michael could do. Michael said that he offered to take some of the data the sales team was working with and actually run it through one of the software systems that he was building with his team. He told me that this act of service was actually his way of building relationships and just genuinely being helpful. Well, guess what? Soon enough, a sales role opened up and his name was thrown into the mix and he got the job. But what I love about this story is Michael, who has no sales experience, no authority in that department, he put himself in a position where people got to know him and he built influence by building relationships. He later said that he didn't promote himself, the team he worked with promoted him. Here's a third point. Building influence without authority is having other people carry your message for you. So what this means is your idea is actually much more persuasive when someone else says it. Now, this has nothing to do with you or the quality of your idea, but it's just how human psychology works. We are wired to look to other people to determine what's valuable, what's credible, and what is worth paying attention to. Researchers call this social proof, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human decision making. Just think about it. Why are you more willing to trust a stranger's Yelp review, food review, Google review versus it coming straight from the chef itself? It's because we like that external validation, and psychologically, we trust it a bit more. So, how do you use this strategy yourself? Well, here's what you do. Before you walk into a meeting where you're planning to suggest a new idea to the team, plan to actually share your idea with 2 or 3 trusted team members first. In Japanese, there's actually a term for this, and it's called namawashi, which translates roughly to going around the roots. And it's the practice of quietly laying the groundwork and having individual conversations, surfacing concerns, building consensus before a formal decision is made. And this is exactly what you're doing. So find a colleague, find someone in a different division, and you just approach them by saying that you want to run an idea by them. You want to get their input. By the way, people love this. People find it very flattering because they get to feel like their knowledge and their expertise is helpful to you. Then, as you're talking to them, you tell them that you're planning to raise this idea in the next team meeting. This whole strategy now helps you build supporters and advocates. So when the moment comes and you now make your case in front of a greater number of people, you're now not alone. The best part is, after the meeting, you might find that your advocates will keep talking about your idea because you've already bought people in from the start. In other words, the influence has already happened outside of the meeting. And here's the 4th point. Build influence by asking more questions, not telling people what to do. Now, it sounds completely counterintuitive, but this is the most sophisticated form of influence because when you tell someone something, they can either agree or disagree. But when you ask someone a question, that leads them to arrive at the conclusion themselves, and they own it and they feel like they're making that decision in their own head. In fact, research has found that people are far more committed to ideas they feel they discovered than ideas that were handed to them. It actually reminds me of when lawyers and journalists like myself, this is what we do. We never push our own perspective. We actually ask questions that make the other person think, that's actually a good idea. This approach is also backed up by researchers. In fact, Adam Galinsky at Columbia Business School said he found that asking perspective-taking questions significantly increases the likelihood of reaching a favorable outcome because it creates psychological safety and builds trust. People build influence when they feel like they're heard and they're not lectured to. So here's how you can use this in your next conversation. For example, when you're trying to influence someone, instead of saying, I think we should go in on this direction, you should ask, what would it look like if we tried a different approach here? Or instead of saying, this process isn't working, ask, what do you think is getting in the way of us hitting this goal? You're not being passive, by the way. You're being strategic, and you're giving the other person the experience of arriving at your conclusion on their own terms. So here's what I want you to take from this powerful lesson. Building influence is not something that requires a fancy title or even years of experience. The strategies that I shared here can help you build influence because you are making your ideas visible. You're speaking to what the other person cares about, and you are investing in relationships before you need them, and you're building your coalition before you even enter the room. And don't forget to ask questions instead of pushing answers onto other people. These are the habits of the most influential people that I've ever met. Now, if this resonated with you, share this video with someone in your life who deserves to be heard more in the room because the world needs more of their voice. And now that you have the tools of building influence, I want to say, comment confident below because I'm going to send you the link to download what I consider my most popular workbook, the Confident Communication Mindset Workbook, because in it, I break down these concepts of building influence and I give you practical tools so how you can prepare for that next big moment at work. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you never miss an episode when it drops. I'll see you soon.